Welcome to Oregon Voters Digest, the program that brings forward the social and political issues that are important to people living here in the Pacific Northwest. And now, your host, Bruce Broussard.
Welcome again to this segment of the Oregon Voters Digest. I'm Bruce Broussard, your host, and I've got joining me today tonight will be Jack Kerfoot, and we've got Dick Carpenter. He's a new guy that's on. He's got his own show there at cable TV. I've done a number of shows with Richard over there. He normally refers himself as Dick Carpenter, but he has his own. He basically is the lead guy, for producers. And he's been doing this show for some time, and I've been there with him. And he's been hitting all kind of subject matters and whatever. So he's periodically, Dick's going to be joining us, and we want to welcome him, okay? All right, Dick, are you there? All right. Okay, sounds good. There he is. He's still there. He's getting in there. When we first got on, he was in Hawaii in the Fiji Islands, but he's back now. He's back. He's back with us. Okay. All right. Sounds good. Well, look here. What we're going to do today is that there's some big things happening right now. But I'll touch bases with the media for that matter. We got Dr. Martin Luther King Day coming up. And we'll be celebrated on Monday. That's the 18th. And so I'm thinking about from our local media here locally in Portland, Oregon. The Portland Tribune is a large publication, and when I looked at that paper today for the weekend, in all due respect, there's nothing about the holidays. There's nothing there at all. I mean, that's a big day, I mean, I looked back to see whether or not there was a Lincoln birthday. There was nothing about Lincoln, nothing at all, if you will. And then now George Washington is going to be in next month. And so consequently, I wonder if we're going to have anything about George Washington. And then I looked around and then I think I saw President Trump on. No, in fact, it was Pillow Talk. That's what it was. That was on TV. The guy who sells all the pillows, he was visiting the president today. That was on national news. He was to talk to some of the issues that were happening up in Washington, D.C. I guess the point of that is that communication is a very key subject matter that's sort of gotten us here today. And like I said, I have my notes sitting in front of me in terms of how we're going to do this thing, and Jack understands that also too. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that's out there. But again, that's why I've got these two guests with me today, especially Jack, is that, look, guys, what we're going to do, and for the folks that are doing for the viewing audience, we're going to touch on some of the most important issues that's facing us today, okay? One of them is Reconstruction, and we'll go into that in terms of Reconstruction, because we got the whole issue that happened on the 6th, the whole issue down at the White House, back in Washington, D.C., quote, the People's House, if you will. There was a lot of issues there. We'll talk a little bit about that piece. We'll talk about the other major things happening, because come Wednesday of next week, there's going to be a new president, and there's a lot of talk about whether or not the president is going to be a part and parcel of the whole ceremonial deal, but he's going to have his own personal deal. I think that's where Richard was. I think that's where Dick was, down in the Fiji. I mean, in Florida. At the trees. But anyway, that's going to be huge. But the other major thing for Portland and for Oregon, it was announced just recently about the coronavirus thing. The COVID-19, and the whole idea. People were being told to get set, because that's what they're going to be. They're going to have shots. You'll be able to get your vaccine here very shortly. And they're going to start out with I think seniors are 65 and older, but now I think they've changed that guideline. They said now it's going to start with 80, and they broke it down to 80, 75, and down the line. We want to talk a little bit about that piece. Then all of a sudden they found out that they don't have the vaccine. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. And then, like I said, we got the whole issue of, so why don't we start off with the Reconstruction concept that I threw on the table. And then, like I said, feel freely, by the way, guys, Jack, just feel freely that if you think there's some other things that we need to focus in on, this is kind of like a jambalaya piece. There's so much stuff, there's so much going on. We're going to have a jambalaya, or if not, a gumbo, okay? That's kind of a deal. We got a lot of stuff that's out there, and we're going to try to cover as much as we can. So, and then as far as you, Dick Carpenter, just follow us. And if you got something on your mind, just throw it out there on the table. This is a jambalaya. You just throw whatever's in the pot that you can put into the pot. So with that, I'm going to start off with Jack. Jack, what do you think about let's say on the 6th, when we had this issue up here at the White House, at our house, so to speak, the people's house? What do you think, just briefly? What's up?
Well, one of the interesting things that I would reflect on is if I think back in the days when there was Martin Luther King marching in Washington, and he gave his very famous speech of "I Have a Dream." The presence of the police and the National Guard was far more present, and the exhibit of force was far more pronounced than it was a few days ago. And the demonstration, or the people that came to hear Reverend King speak, were peaceful. There was no attempted violence whatsoever. And that, to me, is if you have a difference in opinion or you're trying to make a point. I thought that Reverend King was consistent in his nonviolent approach to communicate the importance of integration in our society and change cultural norms at the time, as we still need to make changes today. What I saw a few days ago was, I don't know if the word coup d'etat was the right word, but it was uncontrolled violence. And it showed a complete disrespect for all the people in the Congress. And I thought it was inappropriate and reprehensible. I do not support any type of physical violence or attempts like that against any of our legislators. In our own city, I've read today in the Oregonian that Commissioner Dan Ryan has had his house vandalized 7 times.
Wow.
7 times. And he's only been in office 60 days, maybe 70 days. And that to me is unacceptable. If you don't support what Dan Ryan is doing as a commissioner, run for office.
Yeah, that's right.
Bruce, you've run for office, I've run for office, and we know that's what it is. And you out there and you knock on doors and you talk to people and you show people respect. I may disagree with Mayor Wheeler on many issues, but at the same time, he is our sitting mayor, and I will show him respect. Whether you voted for President Trump or not, you show him respect. And that's true of anybody. Part of that is the training I had in the Army, and part of that is just the way I was raised and the way my parents taught me to show respect. Whether you like the person, agree with the person, show them respect. We're all human beings. And to me, we're all Americans. And the most important thing is that we put aside our polarizing differences and work together to help our country grow and prosper together.
Jack, on that same note, when we're going back to the Capitol, now all of a sudden we've fenced in the Capitol, fenced in with barriers. I mean, rather than having a smooth transition of the presidency that this country was so famous for it to a certain degree, all of a sudden it's fenced in, and one president's not going to be there, former president will not be there, and the president-elect's going to be there, and everybody's sort of up in arms and with reference to the standpoint that might be this, that, and the other. People are all stressed out. And as we know, that again, here we're sitting, we're half and half of our country. We got 2 different entities right now. Half of the country is basically supporting the president-elect, and half of the country is supporting the president who's going to be, i.e., Donald Trump, and then you got Joe Biden. And then that's really a sad note, you know what I mean? Especially at this particular time. So that's quite a piece. And even locally, for that matter, in Oregon, same concept. I mean, to know that Mike Neerman, I know, in fact, I was in this particular issue. This is a representative. I've known him. He happened to be a Republican. The fact of the matter is now he's under investigation, if you will, for letting some of the protesters in the Capitol. I mean, it's just a sad note during this particular time. And like you said, Jack, if you got a problem, you run for office.
Absolutely.
You just run for office.
Absolutely.
Keep it clean. I mean, you know, and the bottom line is that at the end of the results, hey, if you lost by one vote, guess what? You respect that. You run the next time around. Very simple.
Absolutely.
You know,
Yeah, I think it's important to realize there are several things, other things that are creating this tension as well. We have our media that now has gone from a very highly talented, in-depth, large news staff investigating
right.
issues to media that have been devastated by layoffs, and their whole focus is what we call clickbait. What message can I put out there that can draw eyes to my computer screen or to my television? So that's what we have, is we have a lot of clickbait as well. And if we go back in time and look at the flu epidemic just after the First World War in 1918, that was a period that there were massive deaths, like even greater than what we're having from COVID. But what was interesting, this is a period in time that there was a lot of political controversy and upheaval. We had the fascists, we had the communists, we had socialists, we had anarchists, we had upheaval and revolt in Spain, we had upheaval and revolt in Russia. The Tsar was ousted, and then the communist regime came in, and there was a fight internally between the red and the white components of the communist forces. Then there were nationalists, and then we had Italy. And then, of course, we had our own turmoil in the United States. You had nationalists that were talking about the importance of nationalism, isolationists. You had, of course, the Klan. That was a very growing period during this time. This is a very turbulent time across the world. And, of course, in Asia, we had upheaval in China. We had the expansionist of the Japanese Empire. So we are going through many similarities, just like the Spanish flu days post-World War I, except we see it more front and center because of our media that we have.
Well, you know, along that same night, like you said about the media aspect of it, and I'm going to throw this out to the viewing audience also too. Google, who are the highest paid? Who are the salaries, if you will, of all the media, like CNN and Fox and this, that, and the other? Just Google their names. It'll blow your mind. In fact, I'll just throw something out to you. For instance, they made a point right here. These are facts, if you will. People also ask Anderson Cooper clocks in as the highest paid anchor or host in cable news, earning $12 million a year. $12 million a year. I mean, then there's Wolf Blitzer. I mean, let's be fair on all sides. He's clocking in at $5 million a year. I mean, it goes on and on and on. My point is that the facts are there. I mean, that's the newspaper that everybody's familiar with now. So you ask yourself the question: who's stirring the pot? Where are we today? Where are we today? We can't even pick, like I said, we can't pick up a paper. I like the idea of reading a paper with a cup of coffee, if you will. They're out of the business. They're out of the business. And yes, we need this publication. In fact, I can still remember reading the paper when I was in high school, in our government class. That was one of the requirements that we did in the morning. We had to read the paper and then come back and talk about issues in the paper. We don't have that anymore today. And look at us where we are today, right now. Who's stirring the pot routine? Who are the beneficiaries of where we are today? And then I go back to the whole issue with reference to the president. Well, President Trump. You know, we're military guys, and you know, in terms of beneficiaries, thinking about some of the things that we've benefited from his president as president. I mean, I can still remember standing in line, you know, waiting for my benefits as a military person. We've cleaned that up aspect of it. And many vets just recently was able to get their shot, their vaccine shot. Yeah, started out at 80 years old. And I happen to fit. I'm a living person on that particular line. And what it did to me, the first shot, with offsetting that stress. I was 100% when I got that first shot with stress, which was 50%. And I'm waiting for the second shot to get another 50%. And at the end of the day, I've gotten 200%. But the bottom line is that I wouldn't be getting a shot today under the old program that they had on the like the flu shot. We had to wait for years to get that particular shot. So, and this is not a siding deal. My point is that was important. That was important. And then I started thinking about when I saw the whole issue on the 6th with the rioting and this, that, and the other. I saw all these guys in their fatigues and this, that, and the other. I'm sure I recognized some of those guys that were sitting by me and Nam in the name, because a lot of those guys were military. And maybe they're shooting and stuff. Maybe that's why there was no pulling out any weapons, because you had more military people there. I mean, I'm not making excuses for anybody. But the fact of the matter is, we've been spending so much time on this negative stuff and not focusing on the positives. So anyway, Jack, I'm just throwing it on the table. I mean,
I think that's a very good point, because 10, 12 years ago, the VA performance was very poor. They recognized it, and major changes have been made. To be honest, what I find interesting is that you've had your shot, and the VA contacted all the veterans. As a Vietnam veteran, I was contacted and was listening to a conference call talking about the rollout plan of the program that they have and how they're determining who they're bringing in first, second, third, and fourth, and what the tier is. How many they've done, I believe, well over 20,000 vaccinations already.
Exactly.
We're talking about what are the issues, and they opened it up for questions from that standpoint.
Exactly.
Extremely well organized, and they think that they will have all the veterans through the age of 65 done by middle or early March. Now that is, considering there's for veterans there are in this area, including Vancouver, Washington, that's an exceptional rate of performance to get that through. Now, on the Oregonian, headline on the front page today, state's vaccine tracking is a mess. So that's a concern, because what they're highlighting is the fact that they have not been able to keep accurate records of who is getting the vaccine, how many injections are being given out. And that's a fundamental component that has to be implemented in our state if we're going to be effective. So it's not just throwing it out there. It needs to be in a very thoughtful, systematic process. I would encourage our state officials to contact our VA, because I think the VA has a system, and obviously they're doing it at a national level, but they can certainly get the expertise from the VA health director, VA director in the Portland area and Vancouver, Washington area, and I'm sure they'd be willing to share their ideas and expertise from that standpoint. I mean, the issue should be, how do we save American lives? That's the most important thing. Regardless of what the process is, lay out the process so people can understand the rationale. You may disagree, but at least you'll understand the process. And that communication, unfortunately, hasn't been, in my opinion, up to standards at the state of Oregon level. So from that standpoint, I am concerned. I think that we can do better. And I think we need to look at other resources in our state, which includes the VA, to ask, what can we do differently and how do we do it better? Because this virus can be lethal, not just for the elderly, but for all people. And I think there are a lot of myths out there. I Googled on the Mayo Clinic website a list of potential myths for COVID. And it's a long list, and we can get into it later on. But one of the things we have to realize is we still don't fully understand the potential side effects of people who have COVID. Certain people may have lingering side effects that go on much longer. And the other factor that they still do not know is, do we need to take a booster shot on COVID every 2 years, every 5 years? With the flu shot, we take it every year, okay? With the shingles, in theory, it's every 5 years. But again, they're trying to understand this. So this is a new disease. The medicine is trying to understand it as best they can. But we need, from that standpoint, to work together to save lives and to be respectful to others. So I do get annoyed when I see people that think it's not important to wear a mask. Even when I'm out running in the morning, I'm wearing a mask because it says if you catch the disease, the probability is that you will infect 2 more people. So for my concern about my fellow Oregonians and Portlandiers, I think it's important that we show respect to everyone and mitigate the risk for spreading this disease.
Yeah, that was a good point. I'm glad you brought that up because as far as the VA is concerned, I spoke to them this morning, and they told me that Bruce, I asked them what can I do to help, I said we're going to be talking about this at all. And they said, Bruce, well, I'll tell you what. One of the things we're doing is we got to call these people. We call these people because what we do, we take your number, which is your Social Security number, the last 4. But the fact of the matter is, if you're 80 or better, for that matter, normally you have a phone number there. But they said a lot of these folks have not given us their phone number. So I'm suggesting, point blank, if you're a veteran, or if your parents were, or relatives, or friends, or whatever, are 80 years old or better, in all due respect, give the VA a call with that person's name and that DD-214. You understand that, the DD-214, and give them that last 4 of their Social Security number to the VA. Because when the VA called, he said right now when we call them, if they don't pick up the phone, they basically go at the bottom of the list again, but it's still in the 80 category. So the name of the game is that get that information to the VA. You know, you can Google it again. You Google the VA locally if you want to, or you can go from a national standpoint. If they're organized, they've got your name. You're in that system. You will get your shot, and they've been working very hard to do that. So please tell your friends, tell your parents, tell anybody, your neighbors and whatever, to get that phone number. And if they don't have a phone number, give them your number. And make sure that bed is sitting up at that number and get them that call. And that's all they want to do. So that's a very important piece. So thank you, Jack, on that particular note. Okay. Well, like I said, we could probably spend 2 or 3 hours on this issue right now, but we're going to go move on a bit and see what we can do. Now, by the way, I might add also, too, that like Jack was saying, the military is organized. We came from an organized unit aspect of it. We started out in boot camp that way, if you will, being organized. We're from an organized arena. That's one of the reasons why from the standpoint of corporate heads, for that matter, many of them are part of the process because they went through that training aspect of it. But the point I'm trying to make is that the state, like Jack was saying, if you notice when we went through the presidency of Trump, all of a sudden it was okay, fine. We're going to get to this whole issue about the COVID-19 aspect of it, and as far as the mask and this, that, and the other. And okay, let's organize this time from a state, not from a national standpoint. Guess what happened? Again, the divide thing. Here comes the media. That divide. All of a sudden it was, well, I don't like it that way. So now the state was going to do it on their own. So everybody's got their own different program, if you will, as opposed to doing a one-stop deal. And that number that they have is the same Social Security number that I have. They could have organized that thing at the state, and so consequently, when that number come up, guess what? Those people would be called because you got to have an appointment, folks. You can't just stand. We don't want to stand in line. You don't need to stand in line. They will call you with your appointment, and they'll set the appointment up, and you can go down there and get that shot. Now, hopefully, the state, like Jack was saying, they could call the VA and get a feel of how they did it. Because the country is organized as far as vets are concerned. They know exactly how to get their shots. Okay? Well, look here. We spent the time on the vets. We're going to get back. We're going to take a short break, and we're going to come back and give you some more info. So tell your neighbors to put those TVs on and tune in to the Oregon Voters Digest. We're here. We'll be right back. Welcome back, folks, again to the Oregon Voters Digest. You know, we did the first half, and hopefully you were able to get some of the pointers that we were sharing out there. Naturally, Jack and I spent most of the time doing that. But our new guy over here, Dick Carpenter, he's there. He's still sitting there, and I'm sure he got his feel because on his show, he's interviewing all kinds of issues. I mean, big time issues. Richard is quite a host, if you will, on this particular show. But we're going to get him in on this particular segment. Well, naturally, the way we're going to begin is that we're going to basically ask him what did he think about the first half of the show. Hey, Rich, are you there?
Yes.
Okay, no problem. So what do you think? I'm sure you heard some of the conversation that Jack and I were having, right? In regards to up in Washington and things of that nature, and the COVID-19, the vaccine, and how vets can access that. What do you think? What did you think about that?
The newspaper insists the whole thing is a mess right now.
Mm-hmm.
So they're going to have to try a little harder to get the vaccine organized and to the right people. But the paper insists that it's a mess. So that's too bad. And I hope they get started on it. And you covered veterans and all that, so that's good. So we got that. So move forward so much there.
Okay, good. But Richard is by the way, Richard is a veteran also too. Now, Rich, you was in the Army, right? Army? Right, Rich?
Yeah.
Rich, you in the Army?
Yes.
Right. He was in the Army. And he's getting his benefits, if you will, from the VA, and that's a good thing. And so consequently, I want to make sure you
yeah, I've had definitely had some benefits.
Sure we're getting out to the vets, and as Jack said, right now, yes, in fact, in all due respect, just like Jack said, we're trying to benefit the rest of our country because we come from an organized branch, if you will.
Let me tell you one in particular. I got new glasses, and I got new sunglasses, which are just hearing aids. Are you referring to that?
Well, yeah, everything you got. These are all the benefits.
Mostly
right?
Hearing aids.
Right. There you go.
My glasses, checking me out, my glasses. That's getting me approved for the driving.
Good.
Still can't drive at night. That's okay with me.
That's why you got your Zoom. That's what you're going to do. That's why we're entertaining you, getting your program here with Jack and I, okay?
Okay.
All right. Sounds good. Well, all right, then let's get back up into the meat of the matter here. Let's talk. We talked about national, and Jack was just talking about at the end of the day. We were talking about dealing with the local situation, and he talked a little about the whole idea that if you got any complaints, if you will, from a political standpoint, run for office. There's nothing wrong with that. Run for office, and we got quite a task here, and they're very upfront with you about the state of Oregon, but more specifically in Portland. I mean, all you have to do is just drive down the roads and various streets and the highway, and you see all these homeless. These are people, folks.
That's right.
These are human beings across the board. I didn't say color. I said human beings across the board. We're having problems, and look at all the trash and things of that nature out there. Imagine I saw rats running around the city the other day. In the trash aspect of it. Okay? We got problems. We got to clean that up. It's easy to clean up. And in all due respect, and I'm throwing it back out to the so-called elected officials. Most of these people don't have the resumes. Be right up front with it. And I'm not trying to be anti them by no means. That's their job. You've got to know what you're doing. We just can't, we need leadership. We need people that have some idea what to do, and that's why I'm saying we've been talking about the military. Trust me, there's no such thing as a non-organized person in the military.
Okay.
If there are, they aren't there very long.
Exactly.
Bruce, I would like to make one point. We talk about the benefits for the veterans, and perhaps people that have never served in the military and don't really understand what that means. The reason they have these benefits is because of in the war or combat or the service they were put into a very difficult situation. I mean, the issues for hearing, when I was in Vietnam and I came in from the field with my platoon to a fire base to be resupplied, and we were told where we could dump our backpacks and sleep. they forgot to tell us that there was new howitzers on the fire base, and they had a fire mission right in the middle of the night. And so my ears are still ringing to this day from that fire mission. And then, of course, we had Agent Orange that was being used at the time to kill vegetation. And because of that, they then, after they have used it for over a decade, they realized that it is a carcinogenic. So many veterans have had a very disproportionately high number of cases of cancer that they trace back to Agent Orange. And then, of course, for our veterans more recently, whether it was Desert Storm or a wide range of issues overseas, separation from their families, and also in the challenges that they have. So these benefits that we talk about were not free of charge, and were not without a lot of pain and anguish and difficulty that we had to go through at those periods of time. So occasionally I hear from people that have never known anything about being in the service that, oh, you guys just got all the freebies, and it was a value for money. I think the U.S. government and the American taxpayer got value for money from our service.
And just to, as you say, add to the list the PTSD aspect of it.
Oh yeah,
that's not a fluke, folks. In all due respect, part of some of my situation with the VA is that I still have my symptoms because and I'm still carrying it. Now it's like a disease. I'll be carrying it the rest of my life. For that matter. I mean, it spurts off every so often, sometimes on the show. And then the other thing is families. You know, you'd be surprised how many families a vet goes through when they get back home. They might be married 2 or 3 times. You know, it's a tough situation. You got me? And then they've got problems with their kids. So they carry quite a burden, and they will continue to carry that burden. And that's why when I was looking at that whole issue with DC and the situation on the 6th with all of the problems and whatever, and I saw those faces, and I saw those vets, some of them had their covers on, and I could see that PTSD, and I can see how it can be disrupted, if you will. I can see them going in those lines, and well, you know, it's on and on. I'm almost tearing up right now, but it's not easy. It's not easy, and like Jack says, they're deserving this aspect of it.
And
but again, they still
a large number of the people on the streets,
yes,
are veterans.
Yes.
So that's why Bruce and I and Dick, I think we perhaps a different perspective on the people that we see on the street. We don't see someone that's just dirty and struggling, or we don't assume anything. With more, if anything, I'll probably assume more times than not they're a veteran that's facing a wide range of issues from their service or from other experiences they have. So we need to be compassionate, but look for solutions to help them. And as they say, don't give them a fish, but teach them how to fish and help them elevate their situation.
Exactly. I might add too that, you know, one of the other codes that we have, Dwight Merriweather, he and his wife was on not too long ago, and guess what they're doing? They've got a nonprofit helping not only vets but everybody. They're helping them. They're helping these homeless folks, feeding them, bathing them, clothing them, the whole 9-yard aspect of it. He's out there now, and in fact, he's coming up with a program to basically try to see. That we talked about. It's about cleaning up those areas, getting some dumpsters and picking up that trash. And then getting that organized, getting those camps organized so they can identify maybe vets, because I'm part of the process. Jack is part of the process. We're going to try to find some vets that are there in those camps, give them a job so they can supervise picking up all that trash and making sure that it gets in the dumpster. People shouldn't be living like this. That's going to happen.
Right.
So you ask yourself the question, where is all that money coming in the city? Saying that this is basically for the cleanup. Well, gee whiz, where is the cleanup? So so my point is that you know, so like I said, we want to focus on that arena. But again, we had training, we have background in those kinds of arenas. Unfortunately, we've got leadership now I'm not trying to, I keep throwing it on the table. I'm not personally attacking you. It's your job.
Well, Bruce, I think it's important to recognize that, in the corporate world, if your business isn't very well run, you disappear. In the city government or the state government, if it's not well run, you go into a spiral and everyone is hurt. You and I've lived in Louisiana for 8 years, including 2 years in New Orleans. And 30, 40 years ago, New Orleans was a garden spot. It was one of the best cities to live in the entire Gulf of Mexico.
Mhm.
But because of bad governance from a wide range of issues, the city has gone into deterioration. The roads, the schools, the city government, the police, the the fire and rescue. And so now people are leaving the city. No one's moving to New Orleans whatsoever,
Right.
which is a shame.
Mhm.
And we've got to recognize that bad governance means the city will deteriorate and fail and jobs will be lost and people will face more economic hardships and economic downturn.
Mhm. I mean, back on that same note, like you're saying, look at that whole issue of public safety. When you think about public safety, we got law enforcement. We had that in the military. They were called MPs. And there was not a bunch of shootings and killings and that and the other. These guys might tap you upside the head a bit. But the bottom line is that it was an organized force aspect of it. And we were fortunate, if you will, in our society to be able to access some of those individuals when they got out of the military. And that's why I've always maintained identifying the local police, like Portland Police. Many of those guys are veterans, former military, because they've gone through training aspect of it. But again, there's that one piece. But then you've got to make sure that that's sort of an exception. It's public safety. And then you've got the other vets. And I'll throw something out there to you if you want to talk about some very reputable vets who were serving. You've had Charles Jordan. Everybody knows who former Commissioner Charles Jordan.
Yeah.
Charles Jordan. He was a veteran. Okay? You got another gentleman by the name of Answer Haggerty, one of the most decorated military guy here in the state of Oregon. He was a federal judge that took on an issue that most people couldn't even talk to, and he carried it through. And people then die as a result of that, like one did to start with, but they had to find someone to take the lead. He's since retired, but he was a federal judge, still living today, aspect of it. You got Harry Jackson, little guy, but Harry Jackson. He gave up. He was a veteran, and he had some tough times. He's having tough times now. PTSD. He gave up his whole life with a family, the whole 9 yards. And I can go on down the line. Got Bob Elliott, a good friend of mine who was a legislator, a senator. Very neat guy, peach of a guy. I mean, I can go on and on and on. You meet these guys, as you go down the road, aspect of it. Like that. I mean, that's how I met Jack. We were military. we had something in common. And I knew what his resume was. He knew what my resume was. So the name of the game is that vets are very, very important. So when you look at public safety and you look at that, and when you look at that so-called, it's not boys in blues, if you will, it's public safety. Those folks are trained when they get in there. In fact, as I thought about this piece, I came here as a Marine recruiter, of all things.
Oh.
That's what I came. That's how I came here from Vietnam. I got a sign here, and I was good. But now, when you hear this thing about the police ran out of money, and we don't have a recruiter. Well, I called up and said, I'll volunteer. And I'll give the money to charity, if you will. I'll get you some folks. Easy to do. I'll just call up the military and I'll do the interview. In fact, I'll get Jack on the deal. We'll be more than glad to sit down there and interview these guys. We'll get the troops on the table big time. I mean, legitimate guys.
That's one of the issues the police is facing with, that the review process to get someone even to extend them a job offer is 18 to 36 months.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
So
we know better than that.
Yeah, I started to say, having recruited people in organizations around the world,
Right.
that type of cycle time, look, I understand you want to be thorough, but the, I think the review process can be streamlined a bit from that standpoint. And we need to recognize that, of course, as we discussed last week, Bruce,
Yeah.
they just now are talking about the fact that they will soon be coming together to start the negotiation between the police union and the city relative to the police contract. And the question is police oversight and the morals clause that Mayor Wheeler refers to, or basically which is what steps are taken if someone conducts an act, whether it's a shooting, to verify whether or not it was an appropriate act. And we're not talking about indictment. We're talking about whether or not they're terminated, maybe a lesser offense. And all of that has to be negotiated in their contract. That's part of the process they have. But that's when you get into negotiations, like I said, you better be well prepared, or you will end up with no resolution and a bad outcome. I can assure you it will be a bad outcome if they're not prepared.
And it doesn't have to be that way.
No.
It doesn't have to be that way. You know, I'm looking at the council seat, and I'll be right up front. You're looking at two guys out here who are civilians, if you will, that they should basically be a part of that committee, if you will, to a certain degree, because they don't have people on that. And at this point in time, they don't really have one, if you will, as she happens to have been a Navy person. I'm not Joanne Hardesty, but in all due respect, there's some other backgrounds. You know, when you got senior guys like, in all due respect, like myself and our Jack, it's a different ballgame. But we don't have anybody that can communicate. We're dealing with a union. These are union folks. And the union, guess what? They're focused. They know their lane. And they've dotted those I's and crossed the T's. I can still remember one of the union president who was at Stan Peters, Stan. And I tell you, he go into union negotiation for the city and put his 38 on the table. I mean, not that it's loaded or anything like that, but the fact of that is, that was his act, you know, and so consequently, everybody was focusing on that piece. And at the end of the day, he draws up the contract and he's made sure he's gotten the raise for his folks. He did his job. So somebody has to know what they need to do.
Bruce, let's just say I've worked with a lot of unions in the United States and around the world. I have yet to meet a union head that could not teach a class in negotiations.
No problem.
I don't mean negotiate. I mean teach classes in negotiations.
Exactly. In fact, I'll throw a person on the table right now, and everybody knows him. His name is Sam Gillespie. Sam Gillespie. He was the guy that basically developed ASME for the city of Portland, and unionized the city for that matter. Sharp as a whip. Sharp. Still there. Still sharp. In fact, we're going to get Sam to come on the show here and talk about the whole issue of negotiation. In fact, I like that, Jack. I'll give it. He's up in Massachusetts right now, but trust me, we can get him on Zoom and we'll talk about the whole idea of the union. And I've been somewhat, but the bottom line is that they're knowledgeable. Like Jack said, it's not their job, if you will, to educate the other end of it. No. And they know the legal part of it. They've got it down pat, if you will. So boom, that's I appreciate that, Jack. Yeah, we're gonna get Sam Gillespie, and we're gonna get him on, and you might tell your neighbors and other folks, and in fact, maybe even give Wheeler a call and tell him to look at, and all those city commissioners to look at the show.
You mentioned MPs a while ago. My uncle was an MP during the Second World War.
That's military police, right?
Yeah, and that's when soldiers took the trains to get around. Mm-hmm. People don't think that the trains were ever used for anything like that, but that's how they got soldiers around.
Hey, there you go.
That was what he did.
Okay, MPs, right? There you go.
Right, military police.
Right. In fact, when you report it on the base, you go to administration. Make sure you know somebody administration admin, because you could get shipped out anywhere. Make sure you go down to the sergeant down there, the cook, if you will. Make sure you know where he's at. Jack, am I running down the right lane?
Yeah. It was always good to know the supply sergeant.
There you go.
So when we were around the bush and we had kickouts for food and ammunition,
Yes.
we got good quality C's and the appropriate ammunition.
That's right.
Occasionally, I had to pay a visit to the supply sergeant to remind him that he needed to be on my good side and I needed to be on his good side.
Exactly. Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. Well, boy, this is really good, and hopefully the other veterans are motivated to hear these kinds of conversations, and they do. You get a lot of guys that are out now, and then maybe they're not at that age factor aspect of it, and just sitting there, and then time is just gone. But they like the idea of being able to chat and with folks that they're somewhat familiar with, if you will. And that's another reason why we don our covers on the show. We do that purposely to recognize and at the same time educate the public about who we are. You see us day in and day out, and I really respect Jack because he's run for office, and hopefully he'll run again.
Yeah.
Hopefully he'll get elected. Hopefully he get elected because we're going to need and so he can educate some of these folks out here in the areas and put some of that expertise on the table because we need it right now, folks, especially now. And like I said at the beginning of the show, this is Reconstruction period.
Oh.
We're in a Reconstruction era. And if you don't know that, please Google it. You can Google it with Lincoln. And, we went through a Reconstruction era. Trust me. And, war between the states. We had a whole bunch of stuff. And we've gone through all this time. We just got lackadaisy, if you will. We've thrown out the draft. When I see all these young folks out there so-called protesting, boy, I tell you, as a recruiter, I had no problems making my quota. I'd pick them up and clean them up and put them in that boot camp. And when they get out that boot camp, they are straight. Trust me, you get very friendly with everybody when you go through boot camp. The only color is that you're in the military. And then when you get those bennies, if you will, now you can make it. You can make it in any kind of a society. And it's not a bad thing, if you will. You got me? And you're looking at examples right here. You got Jack, and I'm sure that it wasn't about going to school and hey, but by the time you get out of boot camp, you might have had a degree to begin with, but by the time you get out of boot camp, you spend a little time in the military, your career lane changes big time. Okay. Am I right, Jack?
Indeed. I used to have a picture when I graduated from university and went to work, I had a picture on my desk. And my boss came in and looked at it. He goes, "What in the world is that?" I said, "That's a picture of fire-based rifle." He goes, "Why do you have that picture?" And I said, "I want to remind myself that no matter what happens,
yeah,
times are better than what we have right now." So,
exactly.
This is a good reminder. I should never complain about anything.
Oh wow! Man, I can still remember that when I went to Nam and got hit by some of those mortars the first time around, and I heard those babies zooming across my head, this, that, and other. Definitely, that was a wake-up call. Even though through training, through boot camp, we experienced it there. But when you get that real shot over your head, it's a whole different ballgame. Trust me.
Yeah. Yes. And you quickly pick up understand listening is a skill. If you're as a combat veteran, you better learn, or you're not going to be a veteran.
That's right. And you will relate soon. You don't run away.
Right.
You don't drop your weapon and run away. No, you take care of business. It's very simple. Very simple. Well, guys, this has been good. And I guess some of the other things I would say as an ending to the close the deal aspect of it. Again, remember some of the points we were making here. If we got for those folks that are got the siding situation aspect of it, get together, find among yourselves leadership, people that knows how to communicate. And if these people got the right resume, let them run for office and vote for them. Got me? We don't need to tear up this country. We've got a beautiful country. Portland, Oregon was a beautiful city of roses, the whole 9 yards. No problem. We got to get back to that. The only way it's going to get back to that is not division. It's about basically getting together and working together. Point blank. Okay, so now I want you to think about that piece because people are afraid right now. And I saw the faces on those folks on the tube. In fact, I saw what was it? One of the commissioners from the county. Her sister. She's a congressperson up in Seattle, Japal. And I saw this photo and I saw her face. She was scared. I mean, with all this, I mean, Jack and I would be just a piece of cake. But she was scared, and I know that. With these folks yelling and this and the other. So the bottom line is that we've gotta put our heads together and remember that and think about those youth, if you will, education. We got to educate the youth. Don't just set them aside, if you will, and consider, in all due respect, think about the draft. Nothing wrong with serving your country for a year or 2 years, giving it up and getting that experience that Jack and I had. I was fortunate. I had ROTC when I was in high school. Maybe we ought to consider doing that, putting it back into school. You don't necessarily. We're not looking for war or nothing like that. We're looking for an organized training base, if you will, mindset. We know what's going on. Some of the older folks, aspect of it, we're not perennial candidates. Trust me. Okay, so that's a very important piece. Let's see if we can do something about that issue up in Washington right now. That can be easily done. And I would hope that someone who might be looking at the show and hear where we're coming from would maybe contact President Trump right now today and tell him that, hey, look, he should be a part of the changing of the guard, if you will, with the president-elect Biden, and they shake their hands, and go their separate ways. And if he wants to run in the future, he can do that. But right now, the president-elect is Biden, and then we got to get in there and work. And to the media folks, focus on the positive, the things that we need. Focus on the homeless, if you will, to eradicate that situation, educate the public.
Right.
Get that squared away. Make sure if we got a pandemic situation, well, get that squared away. Get it organized. People are stressed out. That's killing probably most of the people. Just the stress. See? So anyway, I want to throw that out. Jack, you got anything you want to add to that? Because we're right at the end of it. And then we'll get Richard to do something too.
Well, I think it's important to recognize that there are a lot of myths out there about COVID. One is that wearing a mask will increase the amount of carbon dioxide I breathe and will make me sick. That's not true. That's false, according to the Mayo Clinic. COVID-19 is an invented pandemic. That's not true. So there's a long list of them. There are no long-term effects of COVID-19. They simply don't know that. Mm-hmm. And some people may have long-term effects from that standpoint, which is the reason that you need to take and get the vaccination. And so get yourself on the list, and when they call you or notify you that it's your time, please make the time to go out there so you can be vaccinated and mitigate the risk of catching it and mitigate the risk of passing it on to others. And that's a responsibility we should all take seriously as Americans, regardless of whether you're conservative or progressive or libertarian, regardless of your political position. I think it's important that we show respect to everyone in our city and our state and our country and make sure that we're being safe and we take care of others as well.
Right. Hey, Richard, what about yourself? You got anything you would like to say?
I think we need to keep following Governor Brown and what she says, because she gets all the information so that she can say, and it's been unfortunate to have to keep especially the restaurants closed, because I feel so bad for all those people that own the restaurants and they just can't figure out what to do next. That's really one of the bad things about all this.
Okay, I appreciate that. In fact, I tell you what, you put Jack at the table, he'll solve that problem overnight.
Oh, okay.
Well, here's one of the questions I asked the restaurant that we go for our takeout. I said, in the military, I used to have a shot record. So when I'm vaccinated and my wife's vaccinated, does that mean we can come inside the restaurant? And the owner looked at me and says, no one's told me. That's a good question. And I said, it would certainly open up your doors. He says, man, that'd be great for business. And I said, well, we know we're going to start getting more people vaccinated.
Mhm.
So the question is, how do we transition from
That's right.
our bubble to a transition as we, at the same time, make sure that we're being safe and following the guidelines
Yeah.
to make sure that we can get these businesses back up and running. So anyway, we'll have to see and challenge our state officials to open their eyes to alternatives and look at what other states are doing to bring our economy back and bring our city back together, to work together, not apart, not separately, to work together.
All right, Jack. That's a good close right there, folks. Please get together with your neighbors and have the same conversation we're having. Got me? We got to do this, folks. We can do it right here. And as George Page used to say on KBOO radio, back to what you believe in. We'll see you next week. Take care.
A large number of the people on the streets
Yes.
are veterans.
Yes. Yes.
So that's why Bruce and I and Dick, I think we perhaps a different perspective on the people that we see on the street. We don't see someone that's just dirty and struggling, or we don't assume anything. With more, if anything,
Yeah.
we'll probably assume more times than not they're a veteran that's facing a wide range of issues from their service or from other experiences they have. So
Exactly.
we need to be compassionate, but look for solutions to help them. And as they say, don't give them a fish, but teach them how to fish and help them elevate their situation.
Exactly. In fact, I can still remember reading the paper when I was in high school, and I'm a government class. That was one of the requirements that we did in the morning. We had to read the paper and then come back and talk about issues in the paper. We don't have that anymore today. And look at us where we are today, right now. Who's stirring the pot routine? Who are the beneficiaries? King Day coming up, and we'll be celebrating on Monday. That's the 18th. And so I'm thinking about from our local media here locally in Portland, Oregon, the Portland Tribune is a large publication, and when I looked at that paper today for the weekend, in all due respect, there's nothing about the holidays. There's nothing there at all. I mean, that's a big day.
Please make the time to go out there so you can be vaccinated and mitigate the risk of catching it and mitigate the risk of passing it on to others. And that's a responsibility we should all take seriously as Americans, regardless of whether you're conservative or progressive or libertarian, regardless of your political position. I think it's important that we show respect to everyone in our city and our state and our country and make sure that we're being safe and we take care of others as well.